Hello there, my people, and welcome to the channel. Today I'll be presenting a great sci-fi story, and that's the movie Capricorn One. This movie follows the harrowing journey of astronauts Charles Brubaker, Pete Willis, and John Walker, and it revolves around a faked Mars space mission orchestrated by NASA when they learn that they will not be able to land on Mars. And so they coerce the astronauts into participating in this cover up. There's a reporter involved who smells a rat and he starts looking into it. Okay, my people, look. I do not want to start a dialogue as to whether the moon landing happened or not. This is not that kind of channel. We are simply going to look at this movie. We are going to enjoy the movie, and any similarities anyone out there may see or think they see is purely coincidental. Again, I don't want to talk about whether the moon landing was real or not, or eureka, here's evidence that it can be fake. Look, this is a fun channel, and people, look, I did not work 40 years to retire and then have to get into dialogues about stuff. All right? So that's the setup. Remember, we're looking at a movie. We're not going to talk about nothing else. Got it? Good. Okay, my people, let's dig in.
T-minus 30 minutes and counting. This is Capricorn Control.
The movie opens with the launch sequence. The astronauts were given their final medical check and clearance. They all had breakfast. The rocket and the crew have been checked out, and everything is a go. We see the astronauts preparing to enter the spacecraft, and there are engineers there to get them into the rocket and to make sure they're secured and everything is fine. One of the guys gives a little speech of how proud he is to have been a part of this, and he gives them a Bible to take with them. On the outside, we see the crowds gathering, showing up for the launch. We see the wives of the three astronauts, and we also see a congressman and his wife showing up as well. Here we can see Mission Control abuzz with all of their pre-flight checks and monitoring. And while all this hustle and bustle is going on the inside, on the outside, the crowds are still showing up. Finally, the vice president and his wife shows up, and you can get the distinct feeling that there's bad blood between the congressman and the vice president.
And he asked me to personally express his regrets at being unable to attend this launch. However, there were some very pressing matters that needed his attention in Washington.
Like getting reelected.
So apparently the congressman is not buying the vice president's excuse for the president not being there at the launch, that he has some pressing matters in Washington. And the VP quips, sure, he's busy with trying to get reelected. Personally, I would find this odd as well, because this isn't just any old space mission. They're not shooting three guys into the sky to circle planet Earth 15 times and then come back. They are sending three guys on a months-long trip to Mars. This is stellar. This is monumental as far as the human race as we know it. This is potentially life altering. However, the president has more pressing things to do in Washington. That sounds about as fake to me as it sounds to the councilman. So it's getting close to T-minus blast off, and we see the astronauts going through their astronaut thing of pushing buttons and communicating with mission control, who's going through their own last-minute checks.
Gentlemen, we're ready to close the hatch.
Anybody want to get out? This is your last chance.
$4 billion to put crazy people into space.
Keeps us off the streets.
So thus far we know two things, peeps. For one, it's an election year for the president. And number two, the space program of trying to get these guys to Mars has cost $4 billion. So we're back at mission control, watching them go through their last minute checks, and we're introduced to Dr. Kelloway, who's the mission director. Now we can see the crew going through their last minute checks and setups before launch when you see someone in that little window. It looks like there's a person approaching the capsule. Eventually, that capsule door is opened.
Hey, what the hell is this?
There's no time to explain. Please follow me.
Are you nuts?
I said there's no time to explain. This is an emergency. Please follow me. Now!
Now, while the three astronauts are being led away, mission control appears to be rolling right along like nothing's the matter. They're going through their own final checks, and as a matter of fact, we hear them saying that they're at 7 minutes minus 50 seconds and counting. But then we see the three astronauts getting off the elevator following this same dude in the suit. The astronauts are getting on a NASA van when a voice from mission control is still counting off. As mission control is doing their mission control thing, we see the guys being led from the van to a helicopter, still in their spacesuits. The helicopter is literally flying off, and mission control is still talking like everything is on course. Then you see the helicopter landing, and there's a small plane which everybody gets on, with the men still wearing their spacesuits. It's T-minus 30 seconds, and the plane with the astronauts are flying off in the opposite direction. We can see them on the plane when they're told that the flight will take a while and they're giving clothes to change into. That'll be more comfortable for them. And at the same time, the rocket is doing its ignition thing and firing up, and then lifting off with none of the astronauts inside.
Looking good, Capricorn.
We're coming up on T plus 40 seconds. Staging should be in the next 30 seconds. Outboard cutoff should be in 10 seconds.
Obico, Capricorn.
Roger, Houston.
Now, did you hear that, peeps? NASA Mission Control appears to be talking to astronaut Brubaker, who's talking back to him. How is this possible when we've seen these guys whisk away on a plane? Yet, Brubaker is having a conversation with ground control. Now, this whole setup really has begun. As the crowd starts to disperse, the congressman and the vice president stop to exchange some words. Again, with the congressman being critical of the president's absence.
Hollis, there are a number of people who feel that we have problems right here on Earth that merit our attention before we spend billions of dollars on outer space.
The way the vice president is talking, it would appear that he's echoing the president's sentiments. Now we see that the plane has landed in what looks like a way out of the way place. The three astronauts are taken to this room and they're locked in there. After a while, who of all people should walk through the door is Dr. Kelloway, NASA Mission Control Director. Kelloway tells them that he would give anything to have another alternative than where they're all at right now.
Here it is. I have to start by saying that if there was any other way, if there was even the slight chance of another alternative, I would give anything not to be here with you now.
So Kelloway starts this whole explanation into this tore up mystery by telling Brubaker that they've known each other 16 years. He tells quaint stories of the history of this 16-year friendship, how they came into this as young idealistic men, and how they grew this program. Oh, he talks about how their families hang out. And he does the same with the other two guys. How they were all a part of this great thing together. Oh, kumbaya and holding hands and rocking back and forth. What being a part of NASA meant to them all. Now, you know what? Anytime you start a conversation with me after you pull me out of a rocket, put me on a van, put me on a helicopter, put me on a plane, brought me to some out-of-the-way place in the desert, after all of that, your lead-in is to remind me about our 16-year relationship. Oh, I know this gonna be toe up. This gonna be straight up, all the kind of way, toe up. Because your lead-in ought to be why you did this to us. Because you put us in a locked room, Mr. Kumbaya 16 years. And so, does he start the story then? Does he give them an explanation then? No, he leaves from the 16-year Kumbaya part and he goes into the current climate. He goes into this long involved diatribe of how the country has lost its awe for spaceflight. He goes on to say that the vice president was at the launch, but not the president, because he was scared to show up. He says the president told him to make it look good because Congress was on his back and that they cannot afford another screw up. I translate that to mean he, Mr. President, can't afford another screw up, but I digress. And then he says, and this is Kelloway, he says to these three dudes, well, guess what? We had a screw up, and boy, was it a doozy.
Amalgamate delivered a life support system cheap enough so they could make a profit on the deal. They made a little bit too much profit. We found out 2 months ago it won't work. You guys would all be dead in 3 weeks.
This manufacturer cut back so much that the life support system won't work. So, as far as I'm concerned, all he had to do was to report this to Congress and scrub the mission. And Kelloway intimates that the space program would have been lost. So what does Kelloway do next? He takes the trio to a room with monitors and computers, and you can hear that this room is plugged into Mission Control back at NASA because you can hear everything Mission Control is transmitting.
Roger, Houston. TMI burn time will be 5 minutes, 45 seconds. Roger, Kip.
Kelloway then takes them through a door, and guess what? It's a movie set. It's a mock-up, if you will, of planet Mars. Red dirt and all. There's a red tintish background. There's a lunar module there. There's lights. There's cameras. There is the whole works. This thing is a fully formed, fully set up movie soundstage. Kelloway says that almost nobody knows about this.
Almost nobody. Houston is monitoring the actual flight. All the telemetry is coming from the command module, so are your voices and the medical data. We recorded everything from the practice simulations.
They've rigged it to where NASA command doesn't even know. He tells them that all they need from them is the actual TV transmissions, the flight, and the Mars landing. Just the TV transmissions of these three things. Now, as far as their return, Kelloway tells them they've got it all figured out. They've rigged the spaceship to land 200 miles off course near this island. A helicopter will fly them to the capsule and they'll get inside. Kelloway says that it'll take the recovery forces at least an hour and a half to get to them. So by that time, everything will be set.
Thought of everything.
I don't know, I hope so.
Of course, you're sure we'll go along.
No, I'm not.
What if we say no?
Well, they got something for you if you want to say no. Kelloway tries the I'm stuck just like you guys, I don't know what I'm doing here trip. He gives this whole woe is me sort of kind of chat. He's saying he cares so much about the program, and then he tries to guilt trip the three. Do you want to be the ones to take us away from the last vestige of dreaming and Americana, yada yada? Then he falls back on the state of the country bit. Brubaker balks, saying he doesn't think this is right. Then Kelloway lobs the grenade. What about your families? Y'all, it's out of my hands, he says. There are people out there. There's forces out there that has a lot to lose. Now, you see my peeps, it has gone from waving the flag to, ooh, my heart is so tender and sensitive about this, to look at the state of America. Maybe you can help the folks to dream again. It has gone from all that stuff to, maybe you need to think about your families. What the heck?
Your families?
What about our families?
There are people out there, forces out there who have a lot to lose.
What about our families?
They're flying back from the Cape to Houston. They're all together on the plane. There's a device. It's on the plane, too.
Kelloway goes on to tell them that if he doesn't send the all clear, they'll set off the device. Kelloway tells them they have to help. It's gotten too big, meaning this thing has gotten way out of control now. Apparently, this group had this thing all figured out. If patriotism didn't sell the three of them on perpetrating this fraud, threatening their families would. Yeah, how about them buddy 16 years now? Now the scene cuts to the media waiting outside of one of the astronauts' home, and we later find out that it's Brubaker's. And so it would appear that his wife and family aren't on the rigged plane, but they have arrived safely at their various homes. This is where we meet the newspaper reporter, Robert Caulfield. In this scene, he's trying to pick up another reporter, and they have this little dialogue going back and forth with each other until Brubaker's wife comes out. She stands at the podium, she greets the reporters, she tells them she's very excited and she's proud. The typical things that an astronaut's wife would do. She also says that Dr. Kelloway has called to let her know that her husband and the others were in excellent spirits. She pretty much says that's all she has for them, and she ends the interview. From there, we go to Mission Control. We see that the date is March 16th. Now, keep in mind that it takes 6 to 7 months to get from Earth to Mars. So realistically, it's going to take these guys, let's just say 6 months. It's going to take them 6 months to get to Mars. They're going to land. They're going to walk around and get some rocks and some dirt and stuff like that. Then get in the spaceship and fly home another 6 months. So at the end of the day, realistically, from the viewpoint of this movie, these guys are going to be gone for a year. So let's just think about this. These guys are on this faked up movie set for a year, going through all this fakery, all this acting, all this pretending on the movie set for a year. Now, I'm saying this because this is realism, this is real life, but okay, in the movies, they can just come up with their own front story, middle story, back story. They can just do it the way they want to do it, but for the sake of just having a realistic second with you, this is how long it takes to get to Mars and to come home. So now we're at NASA's Mission Control, and we see a guy whose name is Elliott. We see him at his computer station, and by the look on his face and his body language, something is wrong. Elliott is noticing something odd on his screen. So, what does he do? Like any old good engineer that's helping to send 3 dudes to Mars months away, he gets up to speak with his superior concerning it, a Dr. Berg.
So, see, I ran a check on the transmission on my own, on the signals.
On your own?
Yes, sir. The readout, the television signals are coming in ahead of the spacecraft signals. It's like they're closer or something, much closer.
No, that's not possible. There must be some malfunction in your equipment.
What the heck? This dude's response is, there must be some malfunction in your equipment. Okay, the equipment right over there. The equipment that's being relied on to get 3 guys to Mars and home. And he's calmly saying, there must be some malfunction in your equipment. Elliott doesn't let it go. He says he doesn't think there's a malfunction because he's double-checked the console. Berg asks him what console he's on, and Elliott points it out. Oh, console 36, Berg says. We've been having some problems with the circuitry on 36. And the dude says, this is Berg, I'll make sure it's repaired. Now, he didn't say I'll make sure it's replaced. He didn't say, hey, we're going to take this thing down now. And Elliott, we're going to put you on another station. Peeps, what does he do? He thanks Elliott for bringing it to his attention, and then he walks off, leaving Elliott standing there looking like somebody threw some cold water in his face. Berg is walking away after this odd conversation. So, my people, what do you think Elliott does? Well, the next scene finds him in his home checking this thing out. Look, after this weird encounter with Dr. Berg, I can surmise Elliott is saying something is off. He's got paperwork, he has reports at the house. You can see him flipping through the pages of stuff because now he's got a bug in his ear that's buzzing in there, bugging him, and he just can't let this thing go. So now we're back at Mission Control, and we can see that it is May 14th. If you remember, the last date we saw was March 16th, so now it's 2 months later. We see that Kelloway is back at his director's post at NASA Control, and the families, being the wives, are driving up. Apparently, there's going to be a transmission from the spacecraft because it's now landing on Mars, and the wives are showing up for this monumentous event. It's noted that contact between Mars and Earth takes 21 minutes. The wives file in, they take a seat. One of the engineers says, we're changing to a secondary frequency. I'm supposing that this is the fake link up to the fake movie set.
We're getting something now. We are changing to a secondary frequency.
Houston, this is Capricorn One. CM-LM separation was nominal. I have CM visual contact with the port window.
While everyone in the United States has paused for this monumentous event, we see Elliott with his head down, typing away like a dog with a bone he can't quite let go of. You know what my grandmama always told me? If you look for something hard enough, you're liable to find it. Now everyone's waiting while astronaut Brubaker is transmitting his countdown. We see Mission Control along with the wives, and we also see reporter Caulfield in the press area.
This is Capricorn One. We have landed.
The whole world seems to be cheering, filled with elation, as if what Kelloway and his nefarious group was hoping for actually came to pass. Elliott is still staring at the console, still shaking his head. Then he gets up and he makes his way towards where Kelloway is standing. Dude, you know what? I know you're just being conscientious, doing your job, but you gonna mess around and get yourself disappeared. Elliott goes over to speak with Kelloway. He tells him there's a problem with the readouts. He said he's already talked to Berg about it, but the problem's still there. Kelloway tells him that, yeah, I spoke with Berg, and yes, we are aware of the problem with that console, and it's been repaired. Elliott tells him the problem is still there. Then the knucklehead says to him, I have run my own program and something is still wrong. And he doesn't think it's the console. Really, brother, don't you watch TV? You should have never said this to this dude. Kelloway says he'll have that particular console shut down and he thanks Elliott. Guess what Kelloway does after Elliott has walked away? Man, I told you, I don't know why people don't listen to me. Now, peeps, what happens next is kind of weird to me. I don't know if this was done consciously on purpose, or if they simply kind of lost the continuity of the movie or forgot that there's supposed to be this 21-minute delay between Capricorn sending a message to Earth getting the message, and then a whole nother 21 minutes for Earth to respond. This was played out and explained pretty good in the movie The Martian. But in real life, there is a time delay, has something to do with orbits. But, you know, this movie was released in 1978, so maybe they just kind of got janky with it, or they couldn't figure out a way to do this without losing the movement or the momentum of the movie. So at the end of the day, Capricorn One has landed on Mars, and now we've got Brubaker exiting the lunar module. What's weird to me is how this dude is talking.
Houston, we are activating the camera. Houston, you should have a picture now.
We have a pretty good picture now.
Houston, I am out of the hatch. I'm on the ladder. Houston, the suit is functioning. The ladder is steady.
I am going down the stairs. I am almost all the way down the stairs. I have 2 more stairs to go. Okay, you know what, peeps? Nobody talks like this. Nobody has left planet Earth going to Mars, has landed on Mars, getting ready to put his feet where no other man has stepped before, talking like a robot. They could have wrote Brother Man a better script. Just saying. And then you've got the group of people at the hideaway who's paying close attention to what is happening just across the hall in the other room, because they have to time Brubaker jumping off the last rung of the ladder and landing on Mars to show, and this is apparently what they believe, that there's little gravity on Mars, and so this guy just can't jump down like he would be jumping down on Earth. There has to be apparently something to show that gravity on Mars is different. So they've got to time it.
Houston, I'm going to set foot on the surface.
Ready, slow-mo.
I take this step in the journey of peace for all mankind.
Hey! Slow-mo.
Brubaker continues his emotionless transmission. He describes the surface of Mars. He reports that in a dry, monotone voice. I'm walking toward the camera. I'm picking up the camera now. I have the camera. The picture will get shaky for a while. The footing is good. I'm setting the camera down now. What the heck, really, peeps? Look, here's the problem with fake. How can you muster up fake excitement when you've been sequestered away in some Texas desert for 2 months with the threat to your family hanging over your head? The best you can pull out of this is to read dryly from a script. I can't see how anybody who is viewing this is not saying something is drastically wrong. If anything else, these wives should be sitting here going, okay, I know my man is trying to, kind of maintain a sense of decorum, but wow, gee whiz. I would hear life and liveliness in my man's voice if he is on Mars. Because you want to know something? Let him come home. You mean to tell me you've been gone almost a year and you don't sound like this is the thrill of your life? And you left me here with these dang on kids this long by myself? You better give me something. And then we've got astronaut number 2, and he isn't much better.
Houston, I am out hatch. Houston, I am on the ladder.
Ready, slow-mo.
Surface.
Take slow-mo.
Houston, I'm outside the hatch. Houston, I'm on the ladder. Houston, I cannot believe this is the best fake script that these guys could have wrote. I can't believe it's the best they could do. There is a pre-recorded message from the president being played as if it's in actual real time, occurring after the astronaut plants the U.S. flag on Martian soil.
Houston, I am starting the tape. To the men of Capricorn One, I bring you greetings from your fellow Americans and all of the citizens of the world.
The president goes on to pontificate how vast all of this is. He speaks about us humans as a species, all and everything we're capable of. And he says, even though we know how bad we can be, he goes on to say that the men of Capricorn One has shown us how good we can be. You know what, peeps? You can't tell me this dude isn't in on this. You can't tell me this. He's the president of the United States. And I do not believe that all of this is being held from him so he could have plausible deniability. Come on. It's just something about the tone of this whole bit that makes me believe he's in on it. That's why he was scared to go to the launch. I believe he wanted to distance himself as far away from this melee as he could. And he's only going to show up to do I believe the minimum that he can do, because he all up in this. He down for this, because remember, this is an election year, and remember, this whole program has cost $4 billion. And wait till somebody here, the somebody's being, the U.S. people, hear that these folks sunk $4 billion, their tax dollars, into a program that they can't really get off the ground. Oh no, I can tell you right now, Brother Man not getting reelected. And he knows it, which is why I feel he's not only in on it, Brother Man probably sanctioned all this. Just saying. Now we see the reporter, Caulfield, is in a local bar and he's playing pool. And he just so happens to be playing pool with Elliott. Elliott tells the reporter, as they're playing, that there is something janky about the transmission signal. He tells Caulfield that the transmission signal just didn't look right. He tells Caulfield that he told this to Director Kelloway, and Kelloway told him it was just a computer problem. As they are talking, Caulfield asks Elliott, so what's the big deal? And Elliott tells him that the signal couldn't have come from Mars. Right at that moment, Caulfield gets a phone call. He goes over, he takes the call, and from listening to his half of the telephone conversation, it doesn't seem to make sense to him. He's trying to ask questions. What are you talking about? Who are you looking for? What do you want? And ultimately, he refers the person to the assignment desk. When he gets back to the pool table, Elliott is gone. Next, we're on the fake Mars set, and the three astronauts are talking.
I'm not going to do it. Not going to do what? Tomorrow, I'm not going to sit in this thing and talk to my wife and tell her everything's going fine. I got to kiss them and I got to look in their eyes and tell them I really did this.
Brubaker says he's not going to sit in the module tomorrow and fake it. They've been faking this thing now for months. He says he can't go home and pretend with his wife and his kids that he did something as great as landing on Mars, when in actuality they didn't. There seems to be dissension in the group, as the other two guys don't want to rock the boat. Willis says, you know what, we decided on this months ago because of you and our families. And Walker says, what about our families? And Brubaker says, well, I don't know. I just don't know. While this is going on the set, on the other side of the door, a guy is sitting and listening. Apparently, the room where the astronauts are is bugged, and we can hear the astronauts talking amongst themselves. The guy listens for a little bit, and then he picks up the phone and calls Kelloway and tells him that they may have a problem with Brubaker. While all this is going on, the newspaper reporter Caulfield is trying to get a hold of Elliott, and he can't. He calls and calls and calls, and all he gets is a busy signal. He calls the operator and asks the operator if there's a problem. And the operator tells him that the phone is out of order. This scene opens and we see that it's July 22nd and 4 months have passed. NASA is waiting for the final transmission from the astronauts as they are on their return trip to Earth. The wives are all there. Caulfield, the reporter, is there as well, apparently with the press. And he notices a computer that's covered with no one sitting there.
We're awaiting the start of the final television transmissions from the command module on its return to Earth. This transmission is specifically a conversation between the crew and their wives.
we see the connection being made between the astronauts and mission control. The transmission begins and we see for the first time the astronauts actually inside their module. The wives are there, all excited to see their husbands after this whole 4 or more month period of time. The wives talk to their astronauts one by one. Walker's wife speaks to him. Willis's wife speaks to him. And then lastly, we have Brubaker's wife who speaks to him. Brubaker's wife tells him that his son wrote a composition at school and he won an award for it. She tells Brubaker that she wants to read the composition to him.
Please read it to me.
It doesn't look good. Do you want me to cut the transmission?
Not until I tell you.
Look, all 3 of these dudes are looking funny in the face. Sure, you could expect him to be tired after flying to Mars and back, all the months that took. But where's the underlying excitement and glee you would expect 3 dudes to have after they did something so unbelievably monumental? They look like 3 dudes who don't even want to come home. Even the tech guy back at the fake Mars setup notices Brubaker's lack of excitement and energy and says, hey, do we need to cut this before this dude go off script? And Kellerman tells him no, not until he tells him to. And so Brubaker's wife starts to read the composition, and you can see Brubaker getting emotional. His son wrote that you have to do things for others. The boy says that his dad is doing something to give people another life. So even though he's far away, he's thinking about me. This is what the boy says. So I'm with him. That's why I'm not sad. I'm so proud of my dad. Now, you can see the emotion not only on Brubaker, but you can see it on the other 2 guys. I even think I see a tear in Brubaker's eyes. But the other guys are looking funny, like they felt that thing too. And you can imagine that all 3 of these guys feel like a bunch of fakes and imposters. They know in their hearts of hearts and in their guts of guts that they did not go to Mars. They know that this is the biggest sham ever. And I think deep down, they realize they're going to have to continue to perpetrate this sham and act it out again and again and again for the rest of their lives. These guys are sitting as we speak on a fake Mars set, looking into the telecasted faces of their wives, who actually believe these dudes were gone for months and months and months on end on the greatest adventure ever. And these guys were just a few miles up the road in the desert on a movie set. I don't know how these guys are going to even not only be able to look themselves in the face, but how can you get up every single day for the rest of your life and look in the face of your family, of your children, of your neighbors, of your parents, of your relatives, of your friends, and all they're going to be doing on the 4th of July is waving flags, throwing confetti, and reminding you of how great and wonderful you are. Your son is going to one day come home with a textbook, and you're going to be in it as the first dude that went to Mars and walked on Mars soil. I don't know how y'all gonna do this. I don't know how. You know what? You think this thing is ended? I think this thing is just beginning.
Kate,
What is it?
there's something I
I want to say.
What is it?
Until I tell you.
Brubaker seems to be cracking y'all in tech back at the fake Mars set. He's got his finger on the button. He want to shut Brother Man down right now. He's saying, you know what? This dude finna give us all up. But Kelloway is holding on. He's saying, don't do anything until I tell you to. Brubaker says to his wife that he knows that this hasn't been easy for her and the kids. He tells her, I love you. He tells her to thank their son for the composition, and that when he gets back...
When I get back, I'm gonna take him to Yosemite again, like last summer.
I will.
The broadcast ends, and next we find the reporter Caulfield at Elliott's apartment. He knocks on the door and a woman answers, and he asks for Elliott. The woman tells him that there's nobody there by that name. He must have the wrong apartment. Caulfield tells her that Elliott is a friend of his and that he'd been there at that specific apartment 1,000,000 times, so he knows he doesn't have the wrong place. He says he's looking for his friend and he lives in this apartment. The woman threatens to call the cops, and Caulfield pushes his way in. And guess what, peeps? The entire apartment is changed. It's completely different. There's even mail there with this chick's name on it. So, where's Elliott? Caulfield leaves the apartment, and as he's driving away, he realizes he doesn't have any brakes. The brake pedal doesn't work. The parking brake doesn't work. The shifter doesn't work. And the car is just going faster and faster. He can't get the key out of the ignition. Nothing is working. And he is careening down the street, missing this, dodging that, driving the wrong way, barely controlling the car. Eventually, he drives through a construction area and into the river. Unbelievably, Caulfield survives. It is now September 19th, and the world is poised to watch the astronauts return from Mars. The recovery ship is in position at the misdirected location. As for the crew, they're led from the fake Mars set to the plane that flew them there.
It'll take the Oriskany about an hour and a half to reach you, so there won't be any rush.
Ooh, buddy, these dudes are hot. If looks could kill, they're good and tired of all of this. I feel them. I can't imagine that they can't wait for all this to be over. Keep in mind, these dudes been gone for months. It would be one thing if they were gone for months on Mars, doing the greatest thing known to man at that time. But no, they have spent months upon months lying not only to the American people, but lying to the whole planet. I know these dudes are sick of it all, and they can't wait to get home and have all this stuff done, all this stuff put behind them. Now, back at Mission Control, they're awaiting the capsule to enter Earth's atmosphere. While they're waiting, they get an alarm.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Capricorn One, we show red on the heat shield.
Do you copy?
Wait. Okay, here we go, y'all. So, we getting this alarm on a heat shield of a space capsule that's sitting over there. You know what? This was going to be their only recourse. Their only recourse. They fed these dudes a bunch of hooey, knowing that when all of this was over with, there was going to be a problem with the heat shield. So back at NASA control, we can see that all 3 astronauts seem to have flatlined. At the same time, the plane with the astronauts in it is getting a transmission from that guy at the fake Mars set, relaying that some type of malfunction has occurred, they don't know what the problem is, and they will keep them informed. As the plane with the astronauts are landing, Director Kelloway is at NASA giving a press conference.
The heat shield is the only protection the module has against the heat buildup on re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. The spacecraft disintegrated within 12 seconds after the loss of the heat shield.
Now, if you will remember, an empty space module did actually launch. So you can believe one of 2 things. One, they actually intended for these guys to keep this big old secret. Or they intended to heat shield these guys from the very jump. What you think? So while Director Kelloway is back at NASA holding this press conference, the fellas are stuck in this room trying to figure out what's going on.
We are dead. Right now, Kelloway is making a speech about what brave, wonderful guys we were.
So, as the guys are sitting around chatting it up in the room, they come to the realization that they need to bounce up out of here. But they discover that the door is locked. Brubaker takes a medallion he's wearing and uses it to take the door off the hinges. They overpower the one guy standing near the plane, and they take the plane, flying it off. The bad guys on the ground try to stop them, but all they manage to do is break off a wheel.
All we've got to do is get to any city, any place there are people. A newspaper, a television station, any place we can show up and be seen, then it's over.
The guys are flying for just a few minutes when they realize the plane's nearly out of gas and they crash landed. Now on the ground, they surmise they only flew for about 20 minutes and the bad guys will find the crashed plane soon, thus finding them. They don't know where they are, how close they are to, or how far away they are from civilization. The guys figure they've got a 20-minute head start on the bad guys, and it won't be hard for them to spot the downed plane from the air. They decide it would be best if they all headed in different directions. Willis finds a survival kit, and they split everything up. They each get a can of water, a flare, a means of making a fire, and sharp objects to use as weapons or a tool.
Remember, if any of us gets caught, or he can't make it, shoot off a flare, so the others will know. I'll continue west. John, you go north. Peter, you go south.
They make their goodbyes the way guys do, saying nothing but saying a lot, and they all head off. Meanwhile, Caulfield is back at the news studio and he's looking at the last transmission tape from the astronauts, specifically the part where Brubaker is talking to his wife and telling his wife to let the son know that when he gets home, they're going to go back to Yosemite. Caulfield notices the wife making a questioning type of a glance. As a matter of fact, he has the technician to rewind the tape back to that exact spot. And that's what Caulfield zeroes in on. Look, y'all, the dude's a reporter, and he is trained to look for stuff that don't look right. And to him, that split microsecond of exchange between Brubaker and his wife to his newspaper brain and his newspaper sniff it out nose, that didn't look right. And he's going to follow up on it. So next we see Caulfield chatting with Brubaker's wife. He offers his condolence and then they get right to it. He asks her about the last transmission. She tells him that she didn't see the point in correcting her husband in public, really. Especially since he had to concern himself with getting back home.
Well, it's nothing. Bruce said that he wanted to go back to Yosemite like last year. Last year we went to Flat Rock, not Yosemite.
Caulfield thanks her for her time and he leaves. Now y'all know this is all Brother Man had to hear. His friend Elliott is gone, still missing. It's as if this dude never existed on planet Earth before. His car all rigged up, almost taking him out. And then this supposedly innocent mistake Brubaker makes concerning their vacation. Oh no, this dude knows something up. And he knows something straight up. And he's going to track it down. Now, meanwhile, the plane the guys escaped in has been found.
There's no one inside? Are you sure? Get more personnel. They can't go too far on foot.
Well, peeps, it's a foot race now. Caulfield's onto something. And all these guys have to do is to stay alive. Back at the desert, we see Walker in bad shape. We don't know how long these guys have been out there. It could be a day, it could be more than a day or so. Because Walker's water is gone and he's crawling. He takes out the tool and starts to dig because he realizes that he's in a dry riverbed and there may be a bit of water below. He hears a noise, looks up, and sees what he believes to be two birds. Then he realizes they're two helicopters. Brother Man don't even get up and try to run. He knows he's done for. And so he just takes a sit and pulls out his flare.
Yes? He was alone? Which direction was he heading from the airplane? Call everybody off north and east. The other two are south and west.
So we find Caulfield at Flat Rock. He's walking around and it's deserted. He's standing looking at a sign when somebody fires shots at him. And he hits the dirt. These dudes must be the same guys that rigged his car because they miss him and you can hear the car speeding away. Caulfield ends up back at Brubaker's house trying his best not to tell the wife what's up, but the wife's not astute. She presses him and he finally confesses that something's wrong, but he doesn't know what it is.
I don't think your husband is the kind of man who makes mistakes, no matter how far away he may be. I think he was trying to tell you something.
What?
What did you do at Flat Rock?
She tells him she can't remember everything they did, but they did take some home movies, and Caulfield asks to see them. She tells Caulfield that a movie was being made the day they were there, and her husband got a big kick out of it. She says he was fascinated with how detailed everything was.
He couldn't get over how something so fake could look so real. He kept on saying that with that kind of technology, you could convince people of almost anything.
Now, back at the desert, we see Willis climbing up this rock face, and he's looking just about as messed up as Walker looked. He's climbing with every bit of strength he has, and when he finally reaches the top, he's greeted by two helicopters, and all he can do is to send up his flare, which Brubaker sees. Having seen Walker's flare, he pretty much knows he's in this by himself. Okay, since they've tried twice to off this guy and nothing has worked to off him, apparently they sent the FBI over to his place to plant some drugs to frame him.
Freeze! Federal agents, we have a warrant to search your apartment. Mr. Caulfield, I'm sorry. However, you're under arrest for possession of cocaine.
Okay. So, they do this sham of a frame job. He calls his boss comes to bail him out of jail and fire him. Okay? You know how it is when a dog gets a bone. Even though this dude has been fired, he's not about to let this go. So peeps, if you will remember the chick he was trying to talk up on earlier in the movie, he calls her on the phone for a favor. He asks her to find all military installations within a 300-mile radius of Houston, Texas. She found one that was no longer in use. It was a base that had been used for training back during World War II. Caulfield figures this has to be the place. He borrows money from her and her car, and he heads out. Now we return to the desert, where Brubaker is trudging along when he hears the helicopters. He runs towards the rocks to hide, and he climbs up the rocks a bit and discovers a cave, and he hides in there. Soon enough, he realizes he's not alone. There's a rattlesnake in there with him. He takes a rock and bangs it upside the head. He skins and eats, I'm assuming as much of it that he can actually keep down, eating it raw. In the meantime, Caulfield finds the military base and goes inside. He's looking around and finds Brubaker's medallion in the dirt. He knows the men had been there. And he takes off running towards the car. It's night. As a matter of fact, a very windy night, and Brubaker is wisely on the move, simply because he would be harder to track in the nighttime as opposed to during the light of day. But at some point, he gives out and collapses. The next day, Caulfield drives up on a crop dusting service and hires the pilot. And they take off, the plan being to look for the astronauts from the air. As for Brubaker, he wakes up and discovers he's at a deserted gas station. In the meantime, a limo drives up to Brubaker's home to pick up his family. A memorial service is being held for all the astronauts at Arlington, and it's a national event. Back at the desert, Brubaker breaks into the gas station's office. The first thing Brother Man does is make a beeline to the telephone. Now, peeps, don't do this. I know Brother Man's not thinking right in his head because he has gone through it, and he's been going through it for months. But I'm glad his wife isn't home. Come on, Brother Man, what do you expect her to do? Call the wrong person? Even if you tell her not to call Kelloway, she gonna mess around and call the wrong person, and you still gonna get unalived in this. Listen, take a breath. Take a seat, see if there's a pop in that machine, maybe have a breather. Think about a good plan, don't hover too long there, but think about what your next reasonable plan is gonna be. Now while Brubaker is sitting, thinking, and resting.
You think we should go in another direction? Hey, what? Over there. Where? Helicopters. I seen them fly around here last couple of days. Let's follow them.
So the crop dusting plane is following two military helicopters, I guess with its crop duster plane cloaking device on, and Brubaker is sitting right in front of a large window while the copters are approaching. He finally hears them, stands up, and peeps from the side. The copters land, and the bad guys get out and starts walking towards the building. The crop duster circles around the building while Brubaker grabs the crowbar and stands ready to whack whoever comes through the door. Brubaker hits one of the helicopter guys. He jumps through the window and he takes off running. As he's running, the crop duster has landed and Caulfield is waving for him to jump on. Brubaker is running and the helicopters are giving chase, and eventually Brubaker grabs on and the crop duster lifts off with the helicopters close behind. The crop duster is apparently bulletproof. The helicopters are shooting, and either the bullets are bouncing off the crop duster, or these guys are really lousy shots. The crop duster is taking evasive measures, and Brubaker has to be some type of a Superman because he's managing to hold on pretty good. The helicopters are trying their best to chase this guy down. He must have been like a fighter pilot in the military. He was probably one of those Top Gun dudes, because he is pivoting and swerving and going up and going down, and he is taking the helicopter dudes through their paces. Eventually, the crop duster pilot has a bright idea, and he tells Caulfield to pull the lever down between his feet when he tells him to. And this is what happens.
Now!
Now here we are at the memorial for the astronauts being held at Arlington Cemetery. The President of the United States is giving the speech that is being transmitted throughout the world. He's praising the men for their great sacrifice in chasing their dream. The President goes on to say that this dream shouldn't be allowed to die, i.e., we're not going to shut down the program. And he's talking about how a nation pulls together in times of crisis, and how these three men inspired the nation's hopes.
A little bit prouder. These three men brought us together.
Well, there you have it, my peeps. Capricorn One. A pretty decent movie for 1978. A better movie when I first saw it back then, but that was a time long ago and in a place far, far away, as they say. I was less critical about movies back in the day and all about being entertained. Now I think I'm a good balance of both. Critical at times, and then throwing logic all the way to the wind and embracing sheer entertainment. All right, my peeps, hit me up in the comments with what your favorite 1970s era movie is. And if you enjoyed the movie and you enjoyed the channel, shout it out by giving me a thumbs up. Come on now, give me a like, and do share. As always, I super appreciate you all and our time together. Have a good one. Be good to yourselves. Until next time.